There are truths that change everything, and then there are the ones that ruin you. When the second DNA profile came in, Detective Elena Ruiz thought she was ready for anything. She'd seen liars, killers, and cover-ups that twisted logic into knots. But this was something else. Because the DNA didn't just belong to someone close to the victim. It belonged to someone who had been inside that house after Rachel Monroe's death. Someone who had sat through the interviews. Someone who had comforted the family. The DNA belonged to Megan Monroe, Rachel's own sister. The lab tech called it twice. Same result. The DNA was on a glass taken from Rachel's kitchen counter the night of her death. The same glass that also held traces of an unknown male. At first, Ruiz thought it had to be contamination. Megan had lived there, after all, visited often. But the timestamps, the prints, and the partial skin cells didn't align with routine family visits. They matched activity from that night. The night Rachel supposedly ended her own life. Ruiz sat in silence, staring at the report under the harsh fluorescence of the evidence room. The hum of the overhead light seemed louder than her thoughts. She could already hear the headlines forming. Sister's DNA found at scene. Was it murder after all? But to Ruiz, it didn't fit. Megan had been the one who never stopped fighting. The one who called every day, begged for the case to be reopened, paid for the independent test that had uncovered the first lie. She wasn't a suspect. She was the reason the truth existed at all. Still, data doesn't care about feelings. It only tells you what happened. Ruiz didn't go to the station. She went straight to Megan's house. It was early morning, the kind of gray, heavy dawn that made the world feel half awake. Megan answered in a worn sweater, her eyes tired but alert, as if she hadn't really slept in years. Ruiz didn't accuse her. She simply placed the DNA report on the kitchen counter. Megan read it once, then again. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "That's not possible." Ruiz said quietly, "Then tell me what is." For a long moment, Megan just stared at the paper. Then she said, "You don't understand. I was there that night." Megan explained that she had gone to Rachel's house around midnight after getting a strange message, just a single text, "He knows." She'd driven across town in a panic, only to find the door locked and the lights off. But Rachel's car was still in the driveway. She pounded on the door, called her name, even tried the back. Nothing. "I thought she was asleep," Megan said, her voice breaking. "But when I looked through the kitchen window, I saw the glass, the pills. I knew something was wrong." She'd forced the door open. By the time she reached the bedroom, Rachel was already gone. Megan sat beside her, crying, holding her sister's hand until sunrise. She never told anyone. Not the police, not even her mother. She couldn't bear for them to picture her like that. "I cleaned the glass," she whispered. "I didn't think it mattered. I just didn't want her seen that way." It was grief, not guilt. But grief can look like guilt in a lab report. Ruiz believed her. But the second DNA sample, the unknown male, was still unaccounted for. The lab analysis came back the next afternoon. The match wasn't in Cody's, but it was partial, a familial match to someone with a criminal record. The system cross-referenced it to a Mark L. Cross, Rachel's doctor, the same man whose name had surfaced in Part 1. But this wasn't Dr. Cross. It was his son, 24 years old. No criminal history beyond minor arrests. Quiet. Lived alone in a condo Rachel had helped him lease when he moved out. Suddenly, all the dots connected. Rachel had been helping the son of the man she once worked for, quietly paying his rent after he'd been fired. It looked like charity, but in her phone's deleted messages, there were traces of something else. A plea, a warning, and one message. Never sent. "If I disappear, it's because I tried to help him." Detective Ruiz got a warrant within hours. She found Ethan Cross in his apartment, pacing like a trapped animal. His hands shook when she read him his rights. When she mentioned the DNA match, his face went pale, the kind of pale that doesn't come from surprise, but from recognition. He tried to deny it at first, said Rachel was just a friend, that she'd helped him when no one else would. But when Ruiz showed him the text logs, the location pings, and the fingerprint from the wine glass, his composure cracked. He confessed to showing up that night, desperate, drunk, angry. Rachel had threatened to go to the authorities after learning what his father had done years earlier to another woman. Ethan begged her to stay quiet. She refused. He pushed her. She fell. The pills spilled, the notes smudged by her hand. When it was over, he panicked. He staged it to look like suicide, using the scene she had unknowingly prepared while comforting him. He left her body untouched, then fled. For years, he stayed silent, shielded by his father's influence, protected by the system's eagerness to move on. When Megan learned the truth, she didn't cry. She just stood there, frozen. All those years she'd spent begging the police to listen, and the answer had been sitting in plain sight, hidden behind a father's money and a department's apathy. Dr. Cross's son was arrested, charged with second-degree murder and obstruction. The story dominated headlines for weeks, from suicide to murder. DNA reveals doctor's family secret. But for Ruiz, there was no satisfaction, only silence. She revisited Rachel's file one last time. The evidence, the photographs, the report that had almost been buried forever. And in the final page, the one with the handwriting analysis, she noticed something no one had caught before. The suicide note Rachel supposedly wrote, the ink matched a pen that wasn't hers. It was Ethan's. In the end, Rachel Monroe didn't die because of a single moment of violence. She died because people didn't listen. The police dismissed her case as routine. Her doctor's power made her invisible. And when her sister screamed for justice, they called it grief. But science doesn't care about ego or reputation. It cares only about truth. And when truth speaks, even through a strand of DNA, it echoes louder than any lie. Megan still visits Rachel's grave every Sunday. She doesn't bring flowers anymore. She brings a single folded paper, the new lab report, and leaves it there, face down. Because that's how her sister's story ended. With evidence, not assumption. With truth, not silence. And with the final words Detective Ruiz said as she closed the case file. Sometimes, it's not the dead who need justice. It's the living who need to hear it. In the age of science, truth leaves a trace. It doesn't always come easy. But even in death, evidence remembers what people forget. And for Rachel Monroe, it remembered everything. This was Trace Crime Files. Subscribe for more stories where truth is stranger than fiction, and justice is never as simple as it seems.